Okay, so the latest Ashes of Creation patch just dropped yesterday, and while some of you are out there getting excited over new mounts, new gatherables, and slightly more diverse enemies, let's talk about the real implications of the latest patch, because this isn't just another batch of environmental tweaks and bug fixes. This is the devs showing us more of the game's future and their vision for it. And if we squint hard enough, we can actually see where they're taking us. Intrepid has introduced pocket dungeons, which are basically mini dungeons that unlock as the node levels up and vanish if a node is destroyed. And so the more you and your fellow degenerates pump XP into a node, the more the world starts throwing high-risk, high-reward challenges at you. It's like upgrading your town in SimCity, except, instead of new buildings, you get ambushes, death traps, and bosses that don't respect your personal space. This means that Intrepid is reinforcing its player-driven world with the mechanics that support that vision. Imagine a world where the PvE experience is constantly shift based on what players do, like an ecosystem that adapts to your suffering. One day your node is a bustling hub of prosperity, the next it's a destroyed smoking wasteland because some overachievers wanted a dungeon in their own node that drops shiny loot. This is going to lead to a lot of siege war politics and a refinement of guilds and inter-guild relationships within a single node. In addition, guilds now have level progression, skill trees, and an exclusive vendor, which means guilds will be able to specialize their buffs according to what they actually want to accomplish. The trade guild I'm a part of isn't exactly foaming at the mouth to cram in more members. We're more interested in trade and artisan bonuses that actually matter to the economy. Meanwhile, the PvP Zerg guilds are probably gearing up to unlock Murder Hobo mode as fast as possible. This upgrade signals a shift towards the guilds shaping their own identities rather than just existing for passive stat boosts and tax evasion and Discord chats about inappropriate topics. It also means some guilds will become very good at one thing, whether it's dominating markets, crushing caravans, or creating a spreadsheet-optimized monopoly on a single rare resource. And when those specialized guilds start clashing, well, let's just say I'm looking forward to the day a PvP guild realizes they accidentally started a war with the server's most organized band of hyper-efficient crafters. When talking about classes, Bard and Fighter archetypes just got tweaked, along with a few others, which is great, but the real takeaway here isn't the small tweaks that each of the classes got. It's the fact that the devs are actively tuning classes, like they did Mage, I think last week, which makes it clear that they're watching, gathering data, and slowly molding the meta into something more stable. Right now, it's the Bard finally getting some much-needed adjusting, but in 6 months, maybe all of the classes get adjusted, or maybe they just get nerfed into the ground. What's important is that this shows they're actively adjusting things, and that means we're in for a long road of these kinds of adjustments. Class overhauls and forum posts filled with people crying about their classes getting nerfed, which, of course, is a fantastic thing. They've also added new gatherable resources and crafting recipes in the Sandsquall Desert, which sounds great until you realize that every change to resource availability is basically a nuke in slow motion. The economy in MMOs is like a fragile house of cards held together with duct tape and denial. The second you introduce new resources and gear using those resources, you throw everything out of balance. Suddenly, what was valuable last weekend is near worthless today. What was worthless is priceless, and some poor crafter who spent weeks farming a resource is now selling old stuff to the vendor to make room for new stuff. But this is a big deal. The devs aren't just tweaking numbers and adding new stuff to farm, they're making the crafting and gathering loops more intricate, giving players more ways to build and specialize. This means resources that were once incredibly scarce because it was needed in every recipe will eventually be replaced by other resources, lessening its scarcity and balancing it. Not just for one profession, but for multiple. And since this is just one region, you can bet the same thing will happen in other areas that don't even exist yet. Today, it's Sandsquall Desert, and maybe the tropics tomorrow, and who knows, maybe some frozen wasteland will have rare minerals that will turn blacksmiths into kings. This desert update is simply a taste of what we can expect in the future. Then, it also brings enhancements to enemy behaviors, including increased wander distances and improved attack animations, which means that mobs are starting to move around like they actually belong in a living world, instead of standing around like department store mannequins waiting for somebody to accidentally aggro them. Now, this isn't some massive AI overhaul. Enemies aren't suddenly going to outmaneuver you like tactical masterminds, but it is a step towards a more immersive, reactive world. If they do keep going down this road, we could eventually see more lifelike movement, smarter target selection, and maybe even environmental interactions that make combat feel less like a theme park ride and more like an actual world responding to your actions. Right now, it's just small refinements, but stack up enough of these over time, and suddenly Ashes of Creation starts feeling less like your typical MMO and more like a world that actually remembers that you exist. And that's the kind of foundation that could lead to some seriously cool stuff down the road. Even though it's very exciting, this patch isn't about new dungeons, class balance, and crafting tweaks. This is the alpha, after all. It's laying the foundation for and giving us a sneak peek into the future of Ashes of Creation. It's proof that the devs are serious about making the world player-driven, dynamic, and constantly evolving. If they do keep this up, we're looking at an MMO where nodes don't just level up, they change the entire PvE experience. Guilds aren't just social hubs, they actually have purpose and meaning and direction. The economy isn't just numbers in a UI, it's a system that players can manipulate. The AI isn't just a damage sponge, it's an actual threat. In other words, Ashes of Creation is either going to be the most ambitious MMO of all time, or the biggest experiment in player-driven chaos ever unleashed upon the gaming world. Either way, I can't wait to see what happens next. That's all for today. You're welcome.